Hi, Sam. Can
Hi,
you
how
see
are you?
me?
Yes, I can see you.
Hi. I'm Devin Anderson, and I'm the chair of this committee. It's been nice to see you on Facebook. Um, what I want to do is just ask you questions that I can remember, the questions that I sent you a couple weeks ago. If you don't remember those, I will try and recreate those for you. But what we'd like to do is learn a little bit about you, about the Anglican Church in Brazil, and about your process of revising the prayer book there.
Okay.
So what we'll do is I'll just kind of ask you questions, and if you could talk to us a little bit about that and tell us what you know, and then we'll have some question and answers from some of the people that are here from the Standing Commission on Liturgy.
Okay. I also want to say that Reverend Marinês from Brazil, who is the current custodian of the BCP, she just texted me saying she's arriving in home and she's going to turn it off her Skype. So if she shows up on Skype, you guys know who she is.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? And you were in Brazil, and what was your role there, and what committee did you serve on? And if you could just give us a little feedback about that and a little information about yourself and your role in that part of in that province in the Anglican Communion. Let's just start there.
Okay. Dessórdi, Leite, that's my name. People know me by Sam. I came from a Roman Catholic family, but when I was a teenager, I decided to be part of the Episcopal Church when I was 13 years old. Happened because I went to a church and I fell in love with the liturgy and the community. So very early in life, I made a decision to become Episcopal because the church was making some profound significance for me in my context. That had to do with the love the community had for liturgy. Most of my period as a young person, I did work with youth ministry and liturgy and spirituality. When I was 18, I went to theological seminary, and that was also the period Reverend Marinês went to as well. So she and we are from the same period. The Episcopal Church in Brazil, for 10 years, the theological seminary was closed. So when we are ordained, I was 23 years old, she was probably 25. And we had a gap between our generation, was generation of young clergy, and a gap of 10 years for the older generation, who was a generation who grew up with the Book of Common Prayer from 1930. Actually, I had also, when I was a teenager, we used the book from 1930, which probably is the translation from your book, 1928.
Yep.
So one of the major differences for us was the fact that Reverend Marinês and I were living during the liberation theology period, which was a strong invitation to be more, to pay more attention in enculturation. And the way we did the liturgy in theological seminary was using worship daily as a laboratory and experience the traditional liturgy on the parishes on the weekend. So both of us were very connected to liturgy. We had 4 years of theological studies. I was ordained when I was 23 years old. And I was member of the liturgical committee, the National Liturgical Committee, for probably 12 or 13 years. In 2003, if I'm not wrong, I was called by the House of the Bishops to be the custodian of the BCP, the Brazilian BCP, and I was the custodian for probably 7 years. So in that period, what we did in the committee was just to look what is missing in the book that we were using during 80s and 90s, and try to fulfill those needs, creating like we had booklets. We had two booklets that was what is the word? Like alternative liturgies and rites. But actually, the book the new Book of Common Prayer during 80s was a really bad reproduction of the BCP in the United States. So that book was missing the morning prayer, evening prayer, was missing all the rites, the special liturgies for Holy Week. We didn't have Ash Wednesday. So a chunk of the original book was missing.
Can I just stop you for a minute and make sure that I'm following what you're saying?
Yes.
So you said that the Anglican Church in Brazil had a Book of Common Prayer in 1930, and that it was patterned on the 1928 Book of Common Prayer in the Episcopal Church. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then there was no revision until the 1980s?
That's correct.
Okay. So, and when was that prayer book finalized?
So we had one in 1930.
Yes.
Which was a translation of yours. And then we had another one in 1984, which was a translation from the
79 prayer book?
Perfect. And then we had the recent one from 2014, if I'm not wrong, which is the one where I participate in the beginning of the process, and then Marinés, she is the one who currently helped.
Okay, great. So I'm clear on that. So the 1984 Brazil prayer book was a translation of the 1979 one in the Episcopal Church. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and then you also mentioned an alternative services book.
We had in the end of the 90s till 2006, two short booklets.
Okay.
With some liturgical resources. So one was actually some of those rights that were missing. They removed from the book from the 1979.
Okay.
And the second booklet was like a selection of alternative rituals that sometimes were necessary, and the clergy had no idea where to find. Things like ritual for a graduation. I think we had some popular religiosity rites on that one. But those two books was mostly in the hands of the liturgical committee, and of some bishops. And people didn't think much of that. So, unfortunately.
You mean it wasn't widely used?
Not widely.
Okay. So focusing on the book that was finished in 2014.
Yes.
So I have some questions about it.
Okay.
So my first question is, when did that start and why? Why was there the sense of call that there needed to be a new prayer book?
Mm-hmm. The conversation on revising the book was going on for a while. When I was newly ordained in my 20s, which was during the 90s, people would make comments that we need to make changes. And one of the major things were the gender language. But it's interesting that people would be more comfortable changing the words of the Bible than changing the words of the BCP. Especially when you talk about the Eucharistic prayer. Everything else was kind of we could imagine, but touching the Eucharistic prayer was sacred. In 2003, when I was appointed to be the custodian, I remember some of the bishops coming to me and saying, now we can move on with the revision. So that first committee was kind of collecting what we have out there. We talked about the need mostly on the morning prayer and evening prayer, because before 80s, we had a lot of use of the daily office. And then I think when the new book came and the morning prayer and evening prayer was combined, was just one prayer, we lost the strength on that. And also in the 80s, had a switch in the Brazilian church of putting much more attention on having Eucharistic liturgies weekly than having daily office. The second thing was the need for the Holy Week liturgies. I remember the first conversation, people were resistant and saying, we're going to look like Roman Catholics. But then the generation, that's my generation, Marine's generation, we were keen to use much of the material that is actually from the BCP, from the Book of Common Prayer. And actually, that's one of the reasons why I came to the United States. It's because in the Brazilian context, I wouldn't have any way to go deeper on my studies on rituals and liturgy. So that's why I ended coming to California. But had a profound need for the Holy Week liturgies. Ash Wednesday, the church was using the ritual from the Portuguese book from Portugal.
So it wasn't because the 1984 book was the translation of the Episcopal Church book, and there is an Ash Wednesday service in there.
Yeah, let me tell you about the 1984 book.
Okay.
The book in 84, I would say the House of the Bishops. They say is the Synod, the General Convention. They agreed of doing the translation, but they said we don't have enough money. So if we're going to publish a book, we need to remove rituals that are less important and keep the Eucharist and a prayer. So several things were removed from the 1984 book. And that's why for this one we have now, we went back and brought back to life.
Can you talk to us a little bit about so the Book of Common Prayer that was finalized in 2014? When did that process start, and how did it start? Who started it? And could you tell us a little bit about the process that you followed to develop liturgies?
So that's why that piece I was gonna waiting for Marinés to
okay
on Skype, because she has the most recent.
Hello, I am here.
Okay, she's there. So would you mind repeating the question?
Welcome. My question is about the 2014 Book of Common Prayer in your province in Brazil. Would you tell us about when that process happened and how that started, and then describe for us what is the process that you develop that liturgy?
Compreendeu essa pergunta, Marinés?
Não, eu preciso traduzir. Eu entendi que ela quer saber como começou o processo.
Quando começou, quanto tempo levou e como se caracteriza o processo? Quantos anos levou?
Levou 30 anos, né, Dessórdi? O processo todo. Porque ele começa em seguida da edição do livro de 84.
Yeah. So she says the process, in her opinion, started 30 years ago. In the moment that the 1984 book was published,
Okay.
people were already saying this is not good.
E aí foi esse processo, a comissão permanente, porque há uma comissão permanente de liturgia, né, que é eleita pelo sínodo e vai mudando a cada 4 anos, mas essa comissão foi trabalhando, então é um processo.
Yeah, so the General Convention elects the members of the liturgical committee, and that committee should have been working in some of these changes continuously.
Sam, I believe that you were still there at that time. So if you were the custodian of the prayer book from 2003 to 2010, maybe you could comment on that. Do you
Yes.
know how they began the process and what they began with?
Yeah, the one of the main things was we had what we call the regular meetings, which was actually twice a year, and we called the diocese and asked for them to send to us all the liturgies they've been using and whatever adaptation they made for certain rituals that we considered important. So in Brazil, the adaptation didn't happen necessarily in local places, didn't necessarily happen in the text, but happened in the way people did things and the symbols they brought in. So they kind of started inculturating with the text they have. We had a couple, one or two dioceses which were more brave and created rites, like the Diocese of Recife, that was a little bit controversial, they created a rite for divorce. If a couple would agree in ending their relationship in peace, they would have a ritual for that. So we got things like that as well. What I can tell you that was observed from the very beginning was the importance of keeping the next book with ecumenical sense. When I did my master's in CDSP with Ruth Myers and Lisette and Louis, that was one of the things that I spoke about. So currently in the new book, for example, we have the Our Father prayer is not the traditional Our Father that was brought from the Episcopal tradition, but is the Our Father that's in use in the ecumenical level in in Brazil, among the national, what we call the National Council of Christian Churches. So that was one of the things. Is Marinês back?
Yes.
Estás aí. Eu estava falando da importância ecumênica na mensagem do novo livro.
Ok. O que tu queres que eu siga falando?
Do filioque.
Ok. Acho que é importante dizer que algumas linhas nortearam o processo de revisão. E uma dessas linhas foi a aproximação ecumênica.
So they chose some lines they chose some main lines to work in the revision. One of those main lines is the emphasis on getting closer or approximation with churches that with churches that are open to ecumenism. So the Our Father was one. Qual foi a outra? Ok?
Quais as outras linhas
Não.
de...
Então, o Pai Nosso foi uma coisa, e a segunda coisa foi?
O Pai Nosso foi uma coisa, a segunda coisa foi atender a recomendação do Conselho Consultivo Anglicano,
So in
retirar...
that sense, the second thing they did, so the Our Father wasn't the only change. The second thing was following the recommendation the CCA
de retirar a cláusula filioque do credo nesse...
Deixa eu terminar de traduzir, Marinas.
Okay.
A recommendation that came from ACC, Anglican Consultative Council, of the observance of the Nicene Creed, and perhaps removing the filioque quote. I'm not sure how to say that in English, but you probably guys know. I had a recommendation recently as to get a closer to our sister church, and apparently they removed the filioque. Vocês removeram o filioque?
Sim, para como forma de aproximação com as igrejas ortodoxas.
Okay, so they did for the new book. The Nicene Creed doesn't have the filioque, and the intention is to a proximity with the Orthodox Church.
E a terceira coisa foi a adoção do lecionário comum revisado.
O revisado dos Estados Unidos da América?
Não, ele é ecumênico. É o lecionário feito pela Convenção de Textos Comuns.
Okay, so the third thing they did, based on that line of ecumenism, was the adoption of the ecumenical lectionary.
Lecionário comum revisado.
Yeah.
E tanto para domingos e festas principais, quanto para os ofícios diários.
They adopted the full calendar for the full lectionary for Sundays, Eucharistic Sundays, as well for the feasts and also daily office.
Is that Sam? Is the ecumenical lectionary, is that the revised common lectionary, or is it different from that?
When you say common revised lectionary, is the one that is in use here?
The one that's new there, is it? Is it the same thing?
Here in the United States.
We use that here in the United States, the revised common lectionary. So our question is that the same thing that you're talking about, that's the ecumenical lectionary that they're using now in Brazil?
Let me check. Marinês, quando diz que o dicionário ecumênico é o mesmo que é em uso aqui nos Estados Unidos, ou é o que o CONIC criou?
Não, esse lecionário é um cenário internacional. É possível que esteja sendo usado agora nos Estados Unidos.
Uhum.
A primeira província, a primeira igreja na comunhão anglicana a usar foi a igreja da Irlanda.
Da onde?
E aí depois da Irlanda.
Depois
disso, praticamente a comunhão anglicana toda usa, mas ele é ecumênico. Okay. E elaborado pela Convenção de Textos CCT.
CCP? Convenção?
CCT, de Textos Comuns.
Well, the translation they're using is from international use. Apparently, the first church to use was the first church in the Anglican communion to use that lectionary was Ireland, and it probably is the same, but I can't guarantee. I can ask her to send me the resources if it's helpful.
So what you've been itemizing or what you've been listing are the major changes or thematic changes in the 2014 Book of Common Prayer. Is that right?
Yes, that's
okay.
correct.
So it was the Our Father, the Nicene Creed, and the ecumenical liturgical calendar.
Yes, these three under the umbrella of ecumenism. There are other changes. There are other changes in the book.
Okay. Can you speak to a little bit about that? What was the need for the cultural situation or the national situation that made the need for more ecumenically focused liturgical resources needed? Why was that needed?
Marinês, queres que eu responda essa pergunta ou tu queres responder?
Qual é a pergunta?
Por que a ênfase no ecumenismo?
Você pode responder.
Okay.
É parte do ethos anglicano.
Sim. So the first thing is, Marinês just said, is part of a ethos. In America Latina, we had during the end of 60s through 70s, several countries living under dictatorship, which led us to a more shared liberation theological experiences. And in that period, in Brazil, an organization was formed, became stronger and wider during 80s. We call CONIC, which is the National Council of Conselho Nacional de Igrejas Cristãs.
Igrejas cristãs.
The National Council of Christian Churches. And são 7 igrejas, né? Ou mudou?
Não é mais.
São mais agora? So when I was in Brazil, it used to be 7 churches, including one of the churches was the Orthodox Church, one of the Orthodox. But it's mostly Lutherans, Methodists, Roman Catholics, Anglicans, a Igreja Ortodoxa e a Igreja Síria.
Igreja Syrian Ortodoxa.
Yeah, so the Syriac Church, and for about 25 years for sure, we've been producing events and religious stuff. When they say religious stuff, like rituals, workshops where we bring people together, and so it's very strong. The ecumenical relationship in Brazil. We had some damage when the German Pope became the Pope, because he was against liberation theology. So they made some major changes in the Roman Catholic Church that affected the way ecumenism was going on in Brazil. But even though it's still very strong, it's something that I miss a lot. And every time we had celebrations together, the Our Father would be one of the things that had no discussion about. We would say the ecumenical. So it was already in the body of the church, the experience of choosing or we're going to do the Episcopal version or the ecumenical. So it's going to be the ecumenical. So that was kind of a natural move. The filioque situation was something new that came from the top down, came from the Anglican consultative.
Consultative council.
Yes. And the third thing, I forgot what is the third thing. Oh, and the lectionary. The lectionary actually we've been using for a while, but we never made formal until this book came out.
Okay. Were there, in addition to these ecumenically focused changes in the lectionary, how else did this prayer book depart from your previous prayer book?
Oh, so many ways.
All right.
It was a dream coming true.
Good. Why don't you tell us about some of them?
I think the major concern of the clergy from my generation, was we are basically using the U.S. book in our language. So there is nothing in this book that would make a difference of being done here or in the United States. So the concern was to make more relevant for people there, which is one of the major fundamentals of the Book of Common Prayer, is to be relevant for the local people. So some of the changes that we did was the language, and that discussion was always there from the very beginning to make gender inclusive. And Reverend Marinez was saying today, you know how difficult was not an easy task. Words that in English is just like if you say saints, for us we have two words for that, and then on have more. So one of the changes was the ancient forms like the Gloria Patri we would keep as it is, but prayers that can be more considered more contemporary or not so from the early church would be adapted to be gender inclusive. A inclusão de gênero aparece nas orações e nas coletas também, né, Marinês?
Aparece em todo o livro.
Ok.
Nas orações eucarísticas, nas coletas, nas sentenças.
Nos Salmos?
Nos Salmos, em todo o livro.
Okay. So when they did the revision, considering the gender, everything, so it was a full revision. That means including the Psalms.
Oh, okay. Okay, what else do you want to tell us about?
So the other thing about inclusion, and that was something that I mentioned in my work in CDSP, was inclusion of national martyrs or people who we consider important in the history of the church. So the new book came out not with the collects, but in the calendar of the saints brings names of local martyrs. Some from Brazil, some from the United States. So, like Mary Packard, she was one of the missionaries who came from VTS in the very beginning of the church, and she wasn't ordained, but she basically had much of the diaconal ministry in Brazil. So she is on the calendar. There is a date for her. Dorothy Stang, the nun that was murdered in the rainforest, who was very outspoken about environment, she is also in that calendar. So had also care to create a balance between men and women to be on that revised calendar.
Okay. I think we have about 10 more minutes, and then I'm going to ask my group if they have questions for you.
I do have more list of things we want.
Yeah, I want to hear as many as you can tell me.
Okay, let me tell you at once, and I'm going to tell all at once, and you tell me.
Interested.
Every question. So one of the first concerns was during our generation, the Book of Common Prayer was in church all the time. Before 80s, people would use the book in home, and that's because we had much more resources. One of the concerns we had is to be used in church, but also to motivate people to start using among the laity in church homes. The second thing was bringing back the morning prayer and evening prayer in separate bodies, because the 1984 prayer book melted the two in one, and you lost the richness of the daily office. So the current book has now morning prayer and evening prayer. And we do have four new Eucharistic prayers, aside of the ones from 1979. Four Brazilian theologians wrote 4 Eucharistic prayers. 2 of those prayers was done by Reverend Martinez. A third one was done by como é o nome do coelho?
Luiz Coelho.
Third one was done by Luiz Coelho, and the fourth one was done by a quarta oração eucarística foi feita por quem?
Duas eu fiz, uma Luiz Coelho e uma pelo reverendo Bruno e pelo Stephen Taylor, Comunidades da Bahia.
Okay, the fourth one was done between 2 people. Bruno is a priest from the in the church in Bahia, and Stephen Taylor, who is a missionary from England, who is working in Bahia. So those are the 4 prayers.
Can you talk to us a little bit about cultural and ethnic diversity within your province of the Anglican Communion, and how those considerations were folded into your conversations and your writing and your development of the new prayer book?
Queres falar pouco sobre a diversidade cultural e étnica do nosso país que influenciaram o nosso livro?
Tu fala? Queres que eu fale?
I can do it.
Outra coisa, eles não mencionaram, mas eu fiz uma lista aqui para ti de coisas que são novas, como a liturgia do casamento em linguagem neutra, e a nova aliança batismal, uma nova litania de ordenações e outras coisas.
Okay. Do you mind if, before I answer that question, there are 3 other things that I forgot to mention? Okay. So the ritual for matrimony. The ritual for matrimony was revised, and the language is all neutral gender, or gender neutral. So whoever is leading the liturgy and to whom is done is gender neutral.
Ou seja, é uma liturgia possível para usar para casamentos
same sex.
Exato.
They designed that to be sure in the future, in the moment that becomes formal, we can also use as a same sex
match.
The second thing is, qual foi o matrimônio?
A aliança batismal hoje é uma nova aliança batismal e inclui as 5 marcas da missão anglicana.
Okay. So the baptismal covenant was redesigned to include the 5 marks of mission. E a terceira coisa?
A litania para as ordenações, ela está ampliada, e as orações, elas são pela inclusão de pessoas e retirada de barreiras, sejam físicas, sejam de preconceito. Enfim, ela é própria brasileira.
So the third thing that was revised and is new is the litany for ordinations. It includes people and language that fights injustice.
Oh. That's lovely.
Algo mais? Algo mais?
Não, assim, tem muitas outras coisas que a gente poderia mencionar, mas essas eu estou achando as
Ela disse
essenciais.
que temos 10 minutos e o povo quer perguntar, fazer
Tá,
pergunta.
então, ok.
Okay, so back to you.
Well, thanks. I'm glad you added those. That's those are very interesting additions.
Do you have a copy of the Brazilian book? The commission has a copy of the new book? No.
No.
Okay.
Is it online?
I don't think so. O livro de oração comum está em PDF online?
Não, mas eu posso conseguir.
No,
eu posso enviar para a comissão se for desejo.
But if you need, she can provide us.
Okay. Would I be able to read it? How's my Portuguese isn't very good. So just shifting gears, I do want to ask you about cultural and racial diversity in your church, and how that was addressed in your process of developing the new prayer book, and kind of where are points of diversity in your community, and how did you work your way through that?
First, I need to say Brazil is very mixed ethnically. It's a country that initially had a large native Brazilian population and was invaded by Europeans, and then later had all Africans brought to the country as slaves. So the country is a melted pot. I used to say one of the major differences between us and the United States is we are very proud of being mixed. And I grew up knowing or listening people saying that more mixed we are, stronger we get. So that piece wasn't much a concern. I would say that the two major concerns that you can see in the book is the gender issue. The church became very outspoken about empowering women from the very beginning. And the second thing is social injustice. And that has a lot to do with the liberation theology movement during 70s and 80s. For example, if you look in the calendar, names that were chosen, one of the names is Zumbi de Palmares. He was one of the Afro-Brazilians who led the revolutions to set free slaves. The other name that shows in the calendar is Sepeti Araju, which was an indigenous leader. So some of these names has more to do with social justice and liberation than not necessarily ethnical background. What else were you asking? I forgot.
Well, that's what I was asking, and in
the diversity in the church.
Yes.
So basically, are all mixed. It's true that so the problem is the concept of what is black and what is white in Brazil. So many of us are just mixed. It's hard to say if there is a larger presence of Afro-Brazilians. I remember when I was in CDSP, we had a panel, and the bishop from Panama was sitting next to me while we are doing the presentation. He turns to me and says, you guys don't have any blacks as bishops. And I said, actually, we do have it too. Since we have just 9 bishops in the country, so it's a good number. But that's because the understanding of what black and white means up here. And in Brazil, some of the indigenous, one of the bishops, he is Afro-Brazilian and indigenous, so it's just the understanding is different of racial issues.
Mm-hmm. So was that a dynamic when you were developing the liturgies? Were there different needs that came from different cultural perspectives?
I would say no, but I can ask Marinés, since she was in the years that they finished the book. Tu crês que teve conflito ou uma preocupação com a questão racial na construção desse livro? Ou houveram outras coisas que foram mais importantes? Eu falei de duas. Eu falei da inclusão de gênero e falei da injustiça social.
Isso. Em termos de linguagem, a outra coisa que se pensou foi não utilizar linguagem racista, né? Trocar de algumas palavras em conotação racista, trocar por outras, como negras, noites, ou coisas assim, trocar por densa noite, ou noites, e coisas assim.
Had slightly change. It has to do with the language. So to avoid words or expressions in the book that would lead to racism or prejudice. And that has a lot to do with the language. Like in Portuguese, if you use the word clarear, which means to clarify, it means to turn something that was dark or black in white. So in Portuguese, that can be a racist expression. So any language or word that would lead to a double understanding, they try to remove from the book.
Thank you. I'm going to ask my colleagues for questions in a moment, but my last question to both of you is, what advice do you have for us? And what I mean by that is, what do you wish that you had done differently early on?
Marinés, ela tem uma pergunta para a gente. A pergunta é o que nós recomendamos para eles que estão começando o processo de revisão do livro. Algo que, por exemplo, que nós não fizemos. Sorry, my Portuguese is going. I'm losing my Portuguese. Algo que poderíamos ter feito que não fizemos.
Olha, Sérgio, não sei.
Vai pensando e eu falo algo. Okay. So the first thing I want to say, it's very brave, and I'm so proud of you for doing this. It's much in need. The gender language is one of the things that we always care about. Something that in my period that I missed, and I wish we have done more, was to give back to the communities some enough time to try the new language. So the window of trial was very short. We didn't have the chance to listen back from the communities to say this is working or not. So most of what was done is based in the materials that we asked them to send to us. So based in the way those liturgies and rites were done, we recreated the language in the revision. So from my point of view, from the period that I was working there, I really missed the fact of sending back for trials. Marinês?
O que foi que tu falaste para eu saber?
O que eu falei, I'm just gonna explain quickly so she doesn't need to say the same thing I said.
Okay.
It's the same. Eu falei que no meu período que eu estava aí, a gente pediu às comunidades que enviassem suas liturgias e rituais, mas a gente não teve, no meu tempo, a gente não teve o período de experimentar. Então, não tive a oportunidade de mandar os rituais de volta com a linguagem adaptada e deixar que o povo experimente.
Isso, é verdade. A outra coisa, eu acho que...
O que nós fizemos foi fazer a revisão baseada no que foi enviado para a gente. So she agrees with that I said, and... O que mais?
Nós notamos que, e por causa desse tempo que foi no final exíguo, né, nós deixamos alguns ritos fora que as comunidades passaram a solicitar, como ritos de epifania ou ligados ao Natal. Ágapes e ações de graça ficaram fora do rito.
Because they didn't have the chance to do the back and forth of rituals. Some rituals were left out. And now what's happening is certain communities are writing back to the liturgical committee and requesting if they can access to those rites. She mentioned some rites for Advent,
Natal,
and Epiphany, and Christmas.
Yes.
Thank you. Questions? Yep, Drew?
I wonder if you could say more about how long the trial period was, how the trial rights were distributed, and how feedback was solicited.
So the question is, if the two of you could say a little bit more about the trial use period and how did you distribute to everybody, and how long was the trial period, and did you get feedback that you could use back?
Mara, eles querem saber do tempo de provação, de experiência. O povo teve oportunidade de experimentar?
Se experimentou um período de um ano. Um ano ou dois. Foi de 2013 até o meio de 2014. E do meio de 2014 ao meio de 2015, nós trabalhamos no livro.
Okay. O livro foi concluído
Revisões. O livro foi concluído e lançado em junho de 2015.
Okay. So first thing first, it was actually the book's 2015. I said 2014, it's 2015. Okay. I forgot we are already in 2017. So answering Drew's question, the more formal period was 1 year, but she said it took a little bit longer than that because people keep exchanging documents in the half of the following year. So it's about approximately between 1 to 1.5 years until the conclusion that was 6 months later after they collected everything.
Dessórdi, a comissão criou um site e as liturgias iam sendo lançadas ali para uso experimental e para reação das pessoas.
Okay, so they created the site as a main resource, so people would go, the diocese would go to that website and collect the liturgies they needed or they want to use. So that was the way they distribute the material. Que mais?
É isso, e aí as pessoas usaram, reagiram, e a partir das reações das pessoas leigas e clérigas e dos se fez a revisão final. A revisão final levou um ano.
A revisão final levou o quê?
Um ano.
Um ano. Ok.
De ler palavra por palavra.
Okay. So the website was open for everybody, and they had clergy and laity writing back their perceptions, their comments, and after they got that, the liturgical committee took 1 year to go through all the revision based on the comments they did.
And then how did they distribute? Was it online or?
It was online. They had a website, and the website contained all the resources. So if your parish want to use, they would download and experiment and write back saying, how did it go?
Did that answer your question? Okay, another question?
Dessórdi?
Yes.
Uma outra coisa que eu acho que é importante dizer é aquilo que tu já mencionou, que muitas das liturgias, elas foram elaboradas ao longo desses 30 anos em que estava usando o livro de 84, e foram experimentadas, e foram liturgias que surgiram a partir do trabalho de outras comissões, de outras pessoas da Comissão de Liturgia Nacional. E essa comissão atual teve a tarefa de compilar tudo isso, formatar e revisar.
Yes, sim, eu falei isso em parte. She mentioned something that I said in the very beginning, which was through this past years, which was about 30 years, members of the liturgical committee collected and produced liturgies that they also used in their communities, and somehow part of those liturgies are also present in the new book, the new revised book. Considering language, that's the main thing. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Drew, thanks.
General convention.
So, Sam, how did you manage conflict, particularly with disagreements around theological approach?
Compreende essa pergunta, Marinês?
Teve conflito teológico?
Se houve conflitos teológicos e se houve, como foram resolvidos?
Digamos que o conflito teológico maior que surgiu diz respeito à visão de Deus ou de forma feminina, né? Chamar Deus de mãe. E aí a forma de resolver o conflito foi o resgate da maternidade, ou da visão da maternidade de Deus, a partir da Bíblia, e aí depois, na própria comunhão anglicana, passando pelos celtas, né, como Juliana de Norwich e outros místicos, né, da Igreja.
Mas isso aconteceu dentro do contexto da comissão?
Isso aconteceu dentro e fora.
Okay. So, yes, we had a conflict. The major one was the fact that the current book today refers to God as a father and a mother. So that was the major conflict, that some parts of the church had a hard time to accept or embrace that image of God as mother. So one thing is changing the language to be gender inclusive, but when change the changing God. So the solution for that piece, or the response for that piece, was first go back to the Bible and work with the church in national level. Themes were the motherhood of God, so working on the motherhood of God, And the second thing was also going back to the roots of in the Celtic Church and bringing some theology from the Celtic Church where God is presented as a mother. She also mentioned Julian of Norwich. So providing a space for discussion and nurturing with theology that's not necessarily new, it's actually ancient theology.
Thank you so much for all of this information. And if you think of something, Sam, if you think of something, you know how to find me.
Okay.
Right?
I'm sorry I wasn't able to be there today.
That's fine. We understand, and we really appreciate that you could set some time aside for us today and to answer all our questions. And thank you for interpreting.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
And it's a great work you guys doing. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. Well, hopefully we benefit from these conversations, so they help us a lot. So really grateful for your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Much. Have a good evening.
Okay.
Good work.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. Thanks.